My brother reported me as kidnapped when I was actually hiding from him because he tried to kill me. What started as sibling rivalry ended with me running for my life and watching him play the grieving brother on national television while knowing he was the monster I was hiding from. Growing up, my brother Marcus and I had what everyone called a complicated relationship. He was 3 years older than me, and from the moment I could walk, we were in constant competition. Our parents didn't help the situation. They constantly compared us, pitted us against each other, and made it clear that there wasn't enough love or attention to go around for both of us. Marcus was the golden child for most of our childhood. He was athletic, popular, and charming in a way that made adults love him instantly. I was the quiet, bookish one who preferred reading to sports and had trouble making friends. Our parents always seemed disappointed that I wasn't more like Marcus. "Why can't you be more outgoing like your brother?" my mom would ask when I struggled socially. Marcus never had trouble with his grades. My dad would say when I brought home a B instead of an A. The constant comparisons bred resentment between us that grew worse as we got older. Marcus seemed to take pleasure in my failures and would often sabotage my successes to maintain his position as the favorite child. When I was accepted to a prestigious university with a full scholarship, Marcus convinced our parents that I was too immature to handle being away from home and that I should attend the local community college instead. When I started dating someone he didn't approve of, he spread rumors that caused the relationship to end. But the real turning point came when our grandfather died and left his estate to both of us equally. Grandpa Joe had always been the one person in our family who treated Marcus and me fairly. He saw through Marcus's charm and recognized that I had been overlooked and undervalued by our parents. His will specified that his house, his business, and his savings would be split equally between Marcus and me when we both turned 25. Marcus was furious. "It's not fair," he complained to our parents. "I'm the older son. I should inherit everything." "Grandpa wanted it this way," I said. "He believed in treating us equally." "You don't deserve half of anything," Marcus spat. "You've never contributed to this family the way I have." Our parents, as usual, took Marcus's side. They suggested I consider doing the right thing and giving Marcus a larger share of the inheritance since he was older and had more responsibilities. I refused. For once in my life, someone had treated me as an equal, and I wasn't going to give that up to appease Marcus's entitlement. That's when Marcus's behavior toward me changed from competitive to genuinely threatening. He started following me places, showing up at my apartment unannounced, and making comments about how accidents happen to people who don't know their place in the family. When I confronted him about it, he would smile and act like he was joking, but there was something cold and calculating in his eyes that made my skin crawl. "You should be more careful, little sister," he would say. "This city can be dangerous for someone like you." I started documenting his behavior, taking photos when I caught him following me, recording threatening voicemails he left, and keeping a journal of every incident. My friends thought I was being paranoid, but something deep in my gut told me that Marcus was planning something. The first attempt on my life happened 6 months before my 25th birthday. I was driving home from work late one evening when I noticed a car following me. At first, I thought it was just coincidence, but when I made several random turns and the car stayed behind me, I knew I was being followed. I pulled into a well-lit gas station and called the police, but by the time they arrived, the car was gone. The officer took my report, but seemed skeptical that it was anything more than paranoia. "Maybe it was just someone going in the same direction," he suggested. But I had seen the driver in my rearview mirror. It was Marcus. The second attempt was more direct. I was walking to my car after a late dinner with friends when someone grabbed me from behind in the parking garage. A hand clamped over my mouth, and I felt something sharp pressed against my ribs. "Stop making this difficult," a voice whispered in my ear. "Just give me what's mine, and no one has to get hurt." I knew that voice. It was Marcus. I managed to break free and run, screaming for help. Security cameras in the garage were conveniently malfunctioning that night, and when the police arrived, there was no evidence of an attack. Marcus had an alibi. He was at a bar with friends across town, with plenty of witnesses to confirm his presence. "You seem really stressed lately, Elena," he said when he called me the next day. "Maybe you should consider seeing someone about these paranoid episodes." That's when I realized Marcus wasn't just trying to scare me. He was actively planning to kill me and make it look like an accident or a random crime. And he was smart enough to create alibis and make me look unstable if I tried to report him. I started varying my routines, staying with different friends, and avoiding being alone whenever possible. But Marcus always seemed to know where I was. He would send me texts with photos of places I had been, proving that he was watching me constantly. "Nice coffee shop," one text read, along with a photo of me sitting at a cafe I had never been to before. "You should lock your car doors," another said, with a picture of my car in my friend's driveway. I was living in constant fear, looking over my shoulder everywhere I went, jumping at every unexpected sound. My friends started avoiding me because I had become paranoid and difficult to be around. My work performance suffered because I couldn't concentrate on anything except staying alive. The final attempt happened 2 weeks before our 25th birthday. I was staying at my friend Jessica's house, sleeping on her couch, because I was too scared to go home. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to the smell of smoke. The house was on fire. Jessica and I barely made it out alive. The fire department determined that the blaze had started from an electrical malfunction in the basement, but I knew better. Marcus had been an electrician before switching careers. He knew exactly how to start a fire that would look accidental. As we stood outside watching Jessica's house burn, I saw a figure across the street watching us. Even in the darkness, I recognized Marcus's silhouette. He stood there for several minutes, and when he realized I had seen him, he gave me a small wave before disappearing into the shadows. That's when I knew I had to disappear. The next morning, I withdrew all of my savings from the bank, bought a prepaid phone with cash, and drove to a cabin in the mountains that belonged to Jessica's family. I left my regular phone at Jessica's burned house and took only essential items that couldn't be traced back to me. I planned to hide until my 25th birthday passed, and I could claim my inheritance. Then I would have enough money to move far away and start a new life where Marcus couldn't find me. But I made one crucial mistake. I trusted Jessica with my location. 3 days after I disappeared, Jessica was approached by police officers asking about my whereabouts. They told her that my family was worried sick and that my brother Marcus was organizing search parties and offering a reward for information about my disappearance. Jessica, believing she was helping, told them about the cabin. What I didn't know was that Marcus had reported me missing the day after the fire. He told police that I had been acting strangely and paranoid, that I had been receiving threats from an unknown stalker, and that he was worried someone had kidnapped or hurt me. He provided the police with a carefully curated collection of evidence, screenshots of the threatening texts he had sent me, which he claimed came from an unknown number, photos of my car in various locations, which he said proved I was being stalked, and testimony from our parents about my recent erratic behavior. Marcus had turned my attempts to document his harassment into evidence that I was being stalked by someone else. When the police arrived at the cabin, I panicked. I thought Marcus had found me and sent them to flush me out. I ran deeper into the woods, abandoning my car and most of my supplies. For the next 2 weeks, I lived like a wild animal, sleeping in abandoned buildings, eating from dumpsters, and avoiding all contact with other people. I had no access to news or social media, so I had no idea what was happening in the outside world. What was happening was a media circus. Marcus had positioned himself as the devoted older brother desperately searching for his missing sister. He gave tearful interviews to local news stations, organized volunteer search parties, and started a social media campaign with the hashtag #FindElena. "Elena is the most important person in my life," he told reporters, tears streaming down his face. "I just want my little sister to come home safe." He described me as a vulnerable young woman who had been struggling with paranoia and mental health issues. He suggested that I had either been kidnapped by the stalker who had been harassing me, or that I had suffered some kind of psychological break and was hiding somewhere, confused, and scared. Our parents supported his narrative, describing how worried they were about my recent behavior and how grateful they were to have such a devoted son looking out for his sister. Marcus has barely slept since Elena disappeared, my mother told the cameras. He's been leading search parties every day, putting up flyers and coordinating with police. He won't give up until we find her. The story gained national attention. Marcus appeared on talk shows, true crime podcasts, and news programs. He was portrayed as the perfect brother, handsome, articulate, and devastated by his sister's disappearance. Meanwhile, I was hiding in an abandoned warehouse, slowly starving and going insane with isolation and fear. After 3 weeks of living on the streets, I finally decided I had to risk contacting someone for help. I found a public library and used their computer to check the news, hoping to get some sense of what was happening. That's when I discovered that I was supposedly the victim of a kidnapping, and my brother was being hailed as a hero for his tireless efforts to find me. I watched video after video of Marcus giving interviews, pleading for my safe return, and describing how much he loved and missed me. To anyone watching, he looked like the perfect, concerned brother. But I could see the subtle signs that others missed. The way his eyes didn't quite match his tears, the practiced quality of his grief, and the barely concealed satisfaction when he talked about how the trauma of my disappearance was affecting our family. He was enjoying this. The media attention, the sympathy, the way everyone saw him as a hero. This was exactly what Marcus had always wanted. He had found a way to get rid of me while simultaneously making himself look like the perfect son and brother. But I noticed something else in the news coverage that gave me hope. The police were starting to ask questions about some inconsistencies in Marcus's story. A detective named Sarah Williams was quoted as saying that while they were treating my case as a potential kidnapping, they were also investigating other possibilities. I realized that I needed to contact Detective Williams directly, but I had to be smart about it. If Marcus had convinced everyone that I was either dead or mentally unstable, showing up alive might not be enough to prove my case. I needed evidence. Using the library computer, I researched Marcus's activities during the time I had been missing. Social media posts, news interviews, and public records painted a picture of his search efforts, but they also revealed something interesting. While Marcus was giving interviews about how devastated he was by my disappearance, he had also been busy handling legal and financial matters. He had petitioned the court to be declared the executor of Grandpa Joe's estate, arguing that my disappearance made it impossible to properly settle the inheritance. He was trying to steal my inheritance while pretending to search for me. I also found evidence that Marcus had been accessing my bank accounts and credit cards, supposedly to look for clues about my disappearance. But the transactions I could see online showed that he had been using my money for his own expenses, paying his rent, buying expensive clothes, and even funding his search efforts with my own money. Armed with this information, I decided to contact Detective Williams. I created an anonymous email account and sent her a detailed message explaining that I was alive and hiding from my brother because he had tried to kill me. I included screenshots of the bank transactions showing Marcus using my money, and I explained how he had manipulated the evidence to make it look like I was being stalked by someone else. Detective Williams responded within hours, asking me to call her from a secure location. "Elena, if this is really you, we need to meet in person," she said when I called her from a payphone. "But I need you to know that your brother has been very convincing. A lot of people believe his version of events." "He's always been convincing," I replied. "That's how he's gotten away with everything his whole life." We arranged to meet at a secure location, a police station in a neighboring county where Marcus wouldn't think to look for me. Detective Williams assured me that she would handle the situation discreetly and that I would be protected. When I walked into that police station after a month of living on the streets, I looked like a completely different person. I was thin, dirty, and clearly traumatized. Detective Williams later told me that my appearance actually supported my story. I looked like someone who had been hiding and living in fear, not someone who had been kidnapped and held captive. I spent the next 6 hours giving a detailed statement about Marcus's attempts to kill me, his harassment campaign, and how he had manipulated the evidence to make himself look like a victim. Detective Williams listened carefully and asked thoughtful questions that made it clear she was taking my claims seriously. "I've been investigating missing persons cases for 15 years, she told me. "Something about your brother's story never sat right with me. Devoted siblings don't usually move so quickly to handle their missing siblings' financial affairs." The detective had already been looking into Marcus's activities and had discovered several red flags. The timing of his inheritance petition, his access to my accounts, and some inconsistencies in his interviews had made her suspicious. "We're going to need to build a strong case before we confront him," she explained. "Your brother has a lot of public sympathy right now. If we're going to accuse him of attempted murder and fraud, we need ironclad evidence." Over the next week, Detective Williams and her team gathered evidence while I remained in protective custody. They obtained warrants for Marcus's financial records, phone records, and computer files. They also re-examined the evidence from the fire at Jessica's house and the reported stalking incidents. What they found was damning. Marcus's phone records showed that he had been in the vicinity of every location where I had reported being followed or threatened. Financial records revealed that he had significant debts that would be solved by gaining access to Grandpa Joe's inheritance. Most importantly, they found evidence on his computer that he had been researching methods of committing untraceable murders. Detective Williams also discovered that Marcus had taken out a life insurance policy on me 6 months before my disappearance, naming himself as the beneficiary. He had forged my signature on the application and had been paying the premiums with money stolen from my accounts. "Your brother wasn't just trying to scare you," Detective Williams explained. "He had been planning your murder for months, and he had a financial motive that would have made him rich if he had succeeded." The day of Marcus's arrest was carefully orchestrated. Detective Williams wanted to catch him in the act of his deception, so they arranged for him to do a live television interview about the ongoing search for me. I watched from the police station as Marcus sat in our parents' living room, tears in his eyes, pleading for information about my whereabouts. "Elena, if you're out there and you can hear this, please come home," he said, looking directly into the camera. "I love you, and I just want to know that you're safe. Whatever happened to you, whatever you're going through, we can work through it together as a family." It was a masterful performance. Even knowing what I knew about Marcus, I could see how he had convinced everyone of his sincerity. That's when Detective Williams and a team of officers knocked on the door. The cameras were still rolling when they placed Marcus under arrest for attempted murder, fraud, and filing false police reports. The look of shock and rage on his face when they read him his rights was captured live on television and broadcast across the country. "This is insane," Marcus screamed as they put him in handcuffs. "I'm the victim here. My sister is missing." "Your sister is safe," Detective Williams said calmly. "And she has quite a story to tell about what really happened." The media explosion that followed was even bigger than the original missing person story. The devoted brother who had captured the nation's heart was revealed to be a would-be murderer who had orchestrated an elaborate scheme to steal his sister's inheritance. I held a press conference the next day, flanked by Detective Williams and my lawyer. Standing in front of the same cameras that had broadcast Marcus's fake tears, I told the truth about what had really happened. "My brother didn't search for me because he loved me," I said, looking directly into the camera. "He searched for me because he needed to make sure I was really dead." The public reaction was swift and brutal. People who had supported Marcus and shared his social media posts felt betrayed and manipulated. The hashtag #FindAlena was replaced with #Justice for Alena, and the sympathy that had once flowed toward Marcus turned into outrage. Marcus's trial became a media sensation. The evidence against him was overwhelming. The financial records, the phone data, the computer searches, and the insurance policy painted a clear picture of premeditated attempted murder. But the most damaging evidence was the recordings. Detective Williams had obtained warrants to tap Marcus's phone calls from jail, and he had incriminated himself in conversations with our parents and his friends. Thinking he was speaking privately, Marcus had revealed his true feelings about the situation. "I should have just killed her quickly, instead of trying to make it look accidental," he said in one recorded call to our father. "All this media attention has made everything more complicated." In another call, he complained about how my reappearance had ruined everything and suggested that he might still find a way to solve the Elena problem if he got out on bail. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before finding Marcus guilty on all charges. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. During the sentencing hearing, Marcus finally dropped his mask of fake concern and showed his true feelings. "You destroyed my life!" He screamed at me from across the courtroom. "I should have killed you when we were kids!" Even our parents, who had supported him throughout the trial, finally saw who Marcus really was. They sat in stunned silence as their golden child revealed himself to be a psychopathic killer who had been willing to murder his own sister for money. The aftermath of Marcus's conviction was both liberating and devastating. I was finally free from his threats, but I had also lost my entire family. Our parents, humiliated by the public exposure of their favoritism and their support of a would-be murderer, cut contact with me completely. "We can't look at you without being reminded of what Marcus did," my mother told me in our final conversation. "Maybe it's better if we all just move on separately." I inherited Grandpa Joe's estate as he had intended, but the money felt hollow without having a family to share it with. I used part of the inheritance to start a foundation that helps victims of family violence and domestic abuse, turning my trauma into something positive. I also became an advocate for missing persons cases, working with Detective Williams to help identify cases where family members might not be telling the truth about their loved one's disappearance. You'd be surprised how often the person organizing the search is actually the person responsible for the disappearance, Detective Williams told me. "Your case has helped us solve 3 other similar cases where family members were involved." Marcus never apologized or showed any remorse for what he had done. In prison interviews, he continued to maintain that he was the real victim and that I had somehow manipulated the evidence against him. "Elena was always jealous of me," he told a documentary filmmaker. "She couldn't stand that I was more successful, more loved by our parents. This whole thing is just her way of getting revenge for a lifetime of feeling inferior." Even facing 25 years in prison, Marcus couldn't acknowledge that he had done anything wrong. In his mind, he was still the golden child who deserved everything, and I was still the inconvenient little sister who had gotten in his way. Looking back, I realized that Marcus had been showing signs of dangerous behavior our entire lives. The way he had sabotaged my relationships and opportunities, his sense of entitlement to our grandfather's inheritance, and his complete lack of empathy for anyone who stood in his way. These were all warning signs that I had missed or dismissed. Our parents had enabled his behavior by always taking his side and treating him as if he could do no wrong. They had created a monster by refusing to hold him accountable for anything, and I had almost paid the ultimate price for their failures. Today, I live under a different name, in a different state, surrounded by people who love and support me for who I am, not for what I can give them. I still struggle with trust issues and PTSD from the month I spent living on the streets, but I'm alive and free in ways I never was when Marcus was in my life. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't escaped that night at Jessica's house, or if Detective Williams hadn't been suspicious of Marcus's story. Would he have eventually succeeded in killing me? Would he have gotten away with it and lived the rest of his life as the tragic brother who lost his sister to a random act of violence? I'll never know for sure, but I do know that trusting my instincts and fighting for my life was the best decision I ever made. No inheritance, no family approval, and no amount of money is worth more than your life and your freedom. Marcus thought he could manipulate everyone into believing his version of events, but the truth has a way of coming out eventually. his 15 minutes of fame as the devoted brother turned into a lifetime of infamy as a would-be killer. And that's exactly what he deserved.